Have you been wanting a small pet lizard for a while but aren't sure where to start? If so, this video is for you. Today I will go over 4 amazing gecko species that are great for first-time reptile keepers and the reasons why. Now, when picking out a gecko species, especially for the first time, there are typically 3 criteria that most people look for. They are cuteness, handleability, and ease of care. Are these qualities important to you? If so, you are in the right place. So without any further delay, let's get started with my number 1 pick, a true classic species for any reptile keeper. The crested gecko. Crested geckos are simply amazing lizards for a host of reasons. I challenge anyone to find a reptile species with lower care requirements than a crested gecko, making them excellent choices for those who want minimal enclosures and a pet that is interesting to view and interact with. Crested geckos have very simple dietary requirements. Complete crested gecko diets are easy to find from brands such as Repashy and Pangea. They provide all the essential vitamins and nutrients for these guys in powder form. All you must do is add water and mix into small feeding cups. They can also be fed live insects, such as mealworms and crickets, so long as they are fed nutritious diets and are dusted with a multivitamin powder. In addition to their easy, ready-made diet, crested geckos have very few environmental parameters to worry about. They do well at room temperatures anywhere between 21 and 26 degrees Celsius. Unlike many other pet reptiles, they do not require supplemental UVB bulbs or heating lamps, so long as your house stays within these parameters. And lastly, they are very tolerant of handling, unlike some other more sensitive species. They are fairly easy to hand tame, and while sometimes jumpy, are not quite as fast as some smaller, more skittish gecko species. But of course, no animal is perfect. There are some cons about crested geckos. For instance, the one environmental parameter they need is high humidity. Ideally between 50 to 70%. This can be achieved through daily hand misting or automated misting systems. Additionally, they do not possess the ability to regrow their tails, unlike other gecko species on this list. This means that if they drop their tail, it will never come back, and they will live the remainder of their lives without it. Another con, or to some people a pro, is how common they are. While there are many interesting color morphs to choose from, they are not as show-stopping or exotic as many other species, which some people don't like. However, being common means that they are relatively inexpensive. Here are some of the common color morphs, ranging from dark to light. Alright, moving on to gecko species number 2. This is the gargoyle gecko. Gargoyle geckos are lesser known than their crested cousins, but this is changing. What makes them so special is they have virtually all the same care requirements as a crested gecko, as both of these species come from the island of New Caledonia. But the main advantage of gargoyle geckos over crested ones is just the larger variety of vibrant color morphs and patterns. This makes them stand out more than the sometimes muted colors of crested geckos. Another benefit is that they have the ability to regenerate their tails, unlike the crested geckos, which permanently lose them. Their dietary requirements are similar to those of the crested gecko, and they can eat the same prepared food mixes as them. While they may seem like the perfect gecko species, there are still some downsides. For one, they get larger than crested geckos, which means you might need to invest more in a larger terrarium to allow for comfortable movement. Additionally, they can be more standoffish than the crested geckos, making them more difficult at times to hand tame, though this isn't always the case. And finally, the main reason why you would get a crested gecko over the gargoyle is simply price. While they are becoming more mainstream, and thus less expensive, there are still way more crested gecko breeders, and you can find crested geckos much more easily at your name brand pet store than a gargoyle. Gecko number 3. The leopard geckos are one of the most popular species after the crested geckos. While they have different care requirements, leopards are also known to be a relatively simple and hardy species to care for. One of the main reasons people are drawn to leopard geckos is their adorable appearance. They come in a wide variety of color morphs, from bubblegum pink to fire orange and everything in between. There is a color morph for every person when it comes to leopard geckos. Another big draw for this species is simply their handleability. They are quite large when fully grown and are more tolerant of handling than many other smaller gecko species. This makes them good pets for those who like to occasionally take their reptiles out of the enclosure. Additionally, they lack the sticky toe pads found on many tropical species of gecko, meaning that they aren't the best escape artists and cannot climb up smooth surfaces. They eat common insect species that you can find at your local pet shop, such as mealworms and crickets. Just make sure they are gut-loaded and sprinkled with vitamin powder before feeding. Their popularity, much like the crested geckos, makes them extremely easy to find and very affordable compared to some other species. But like all the other geckos on this list, there are certain drawbacks to leopard geckos. Most notable are their heating requirements. They need a heat source, as well as a source of UVB light. This makes them more difficult to leave for longer periods of time, as it is important to ensure temperatures in their enclosures are properly regulated. However, being a desert species, they do not require the high humidity that the gargoyles and crested geckos do. And finally, while they do eat common insects, it is still harder to feed them than the crested or gargoyle geckos, who can get their nutrients for a mixable powder diet. Gecko number 4, fat-tailed gecko. Fat-tailed geckos are to leopard geckos much the same as gargoyles are to crested geckos. They share similar habitat and dietary requirements as leopard geckos, while being a less common pet and a more unique choice. However, there are some things to note. Particularly, they require higher humidity levels than leopard geckos, ideally between 50 to 70%, whereas leopard geckos are happier with lower humidities of 30 to 40%. They can also be a bit more shy than leopards and not as active. Their appearance is quite similar, however, there are fewer morphs available for fat-tailed geckos, so if you are after some wacky colors, you are better off with a leopard gecko. And finally, leopard geckos are perhaps the most readily available species of gecko, with just about every pet store carrying them. This, paired with their low cost, gives them a slight edge over the fat-tailed geckos. Alright, hopefully this video gave you some insight into which gecko is right for you. Of course, make sure to do your own research before making any final decisions.